The title of today's message is A Leg Up. So I did a little research on dogs and why they lift a leg up. So here's the technical answer. By lifting his leg, he gets optimal aim to show his stature. A dog will also choose to urinate on vertical objects such as trees, poles, or hydrants, because scents last longer on them. I did not know that. To get the placement just right, your dog will lift his leg so he marks the spot he wants. I think we probably all knew that, but there we go. So we're going to kind of talk about that kind of leg up from this point of view. Too many times men especially go around marking their territory, making everything about their own personal victory instead of helping someone else get ahead. Now, the other definition for a leg up literally means a boost from another person that enables one to reach something that one could not reach on one's own, an advantage in a situation or over another person. So, a leg up, if you've ever gotten on a horse, you can't get on the horse, someone will stand, kind of next to the horse, and they'll give you a leg up. You put your foot in their hand, and they'll help you up. You can't get up any other way unless you make a run at it. Don't recommend that. Changing a light bulb. I was at one of my girls' house the other day, and there was a light outside. She just moved in, didn't have a ladder, and she couldn't reach it. I couldn't reach it, so I leaned up against the wall, and she stepped in my hand, and up she went. And it took a little longer than I was counting on, but, we got the light bulb changed, but she couldn't have done it without a ladder by herself. I could not have done it by myself. So sometimes you got to help somebody get where they're going. It's a kind of help where someone provides a knee or crossed hand as support for someone to place a foot on to get higher. And I mentioned mounting a horse, climbing over something. It can also mean the act or instance of assisting, a boost, a position of advantage, an edge. So go to Genesis chapter 39. Now, a lot of times, if you're not in the right frame of mind, the question becomes, okay, well, if I help someone, what's in it for me? And I don't know where this started. Maybe we're just naturally selfish. But you think, okay, well, if I'm going to help this person, is there going to be a return on my investment in their life? You can't go into everything in life like this. You just nobody around you will get where they're trying to go with your help, especially. And people kind of pick up on that. If you're selfish about your willingness to help other people, sometimes that causes them to respond or react the same way and go, you know what? Good luck, dude. You can't help me. Maybe I can't help you. Now you say, well, the other person shouldn't respond that way. We're assuming everyone's healthy, and they're not. I'm going to tell this story just so I don't forget it later. So I've got a young man in my life, been discipling this guy, and I won't get into all the details of this situation, but he has a skill set, and I have a friend that can evaluate his skill set. This gentleman that I know. And so I said, hey, you ought to go see so-and-so and let him evaluate your skill set. Well, he calls and no response. He emails, no response. I texted, no response. So I made a call just the other day, and I said, look, hope you're doing well. If you don't call my friend, you're not going to be doing well. Kind of that. Didn't say that. Hope you're doing well. I think my friend has tried to reach out to you. I will personally pay you for whatever amount of time it takes to evaluate my friend. Please call me back. Now, I may or may not hear from him. If I don't, he will see me. Right? You say, well, what's in it for you? This young man that I'm trying to help is what's in it for me. Because he can't reach the bulb by himself. Turns out I can't even reach the bulb. But I'm going to keep trying. Now, I'd like you today to think about this. Who in your life has come along and said, hey, I'll help you? And are you that same person? Are you the type of person who gives a leg up, or are you just going around marking territory? And me and mine, and I'm going to get ahead and protect my life, my family, my business, me. Or do you find yourself saying, Lord, show me where there are opportunities to help other people? Genesis 39, if you hear me preach any amount of time, one of the people I cannot wait to spend some time with in eternity is this kid Joseph. In the Old Testament, and I'm not going to read his whole story, but when he was about 17, I think it is, he had a couple of dreams and told them to his brothers. He's the baby in the family. His dad made him a coat of many colors. And his brothers hated him. He told his dad the dream, one day everybody will bow to me. I mean, it was some dreams you're like, don't be sharing the dream. It turned out to be true, right? So Joseph has experience with dreams. This will be important in a minute. And whatever he saw, it was so impactful to him that apparently he never backed off of it. So let me figure out how to even say this. If God gives you something and calls you to something and tells you to do something, you have to keep going. You say, but what if there are obstacles? That has nothing to do with you getting where you're going. It just means you have to clear the obstacles. Well, what if I don't get there? Let God be God. Just live it one day at a time and let him figure out how you're going to get there, but have the right attitude and the right approach along the way, because the journey adds up sometimes to making you the person you need to be in the destination. So Joseph, 17-year-old kid, tells his brothers, long story short, they hate him. They're going to kill him, literally. He goes out to check on them, watching the sheep. They're going to kill him. Big brother says, don't kill him. Throw him in a pit. We'll kill an animal, put it on his coat of many colors, tell dad he died, he was eaten by a wild animal. And they sold their own brother into slavery. Some slave traders came by and they sell the kid. Teenager. You say, who are these people? Turns out if you go look up who these people are, the 12 tribes of Israel are named after these total idiots. And I just straight up, every once in a while go, God, seriously? You couldn't find another family that would not sell one of their brothers into slavery? So if you go read this story, if you're feeling discouraged, you think your family's jacked up, man, the Bible is filled with jacked up families. Turns out God has an affinity for jacked up families. And you say, well, he can't use my family. Just read your Bible. You'll go, okay, well, I guess if he can use him, he can use me. So we're going to pick this story up. Joseph ends up being sold into slavery. A guy named Potiphar buys him. Potiphar lets him run his whole house. His wife is chasing Joseph around the house every day. Finally, one day, sleep with me, lie with me. And he won't, and he's in the house by himself one day. And she accuses him of, trying something. So Potiphar has to do something. He's angry. You say, well, he's angry at Joseph. He may be angry at Joseph for being in the house with his wife. I think women know who they're married to, and men know who they're married to. And so he didn't have Joseph killed. He had him thrown in the king's prison. Okay? So Joseph goes from being at home where he's supposed to be, sold into slavery, running Potiphar's house. Now he's in prison. And I've shared this before, and this is what is so perplexing to me about this kid. There is not a single verse in here of complaint. You've got to stop whining about the obstacles. well, this ain't right, and this is not fair, and well, they're getting some, and I'm not, and that, why am I in prison? Why am I? Why? You're going to whine your life away. Instead of saying, you know what? God showed me something. God told me something. He's got a plan, and he would not allow all this. Now, if you brought some crazy thing on yourself, I wouldn't complain about that either. I'd just repent from it and say, Lord, that was all me. I take responsibility and move forward. But unless he's just allowing things, and if that's the case, you've got to stay on that track and trust him that all the things that he allows are built into turning you into the person you need to be to do what he's asked you to do, even the tragedies. So he ends up in prison, the king's prison, Pharaoh's prison. Let's go to Genesis 39, verse 21. Astonishing. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. So you say, well, this sucks. I'm running a prison. Run the prison. You say, well, I don't want to run the prison. You don't get to ask sometimes. That's where God puts you, maybe to train you for something else. And if you can't submit and trust him in that, you will not be ready for the next thing. It's just how it works. I know a man who started kind of literally in the mailroom of a company, ended up the CEO of this huge billions and billions of dollar company. They'll put you down there for a reason. If you can't run the mailroom, you don't need to be running any room. Genesis 40. And I love this phrase. This is going to seem like an odd thing to tell you to underline in your Bible. The first 4 words of Genesis 40, verse 1. What's it say? It came to pass. You know what that means? Whatever you're in the middle of, it might have come to pass. It's going to pass. It's not going to stay. And it came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them. Each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. What does he care if they're sad? He's running a prison. I hope you're sad. Right? I'm in prison, now you're in prison. You're sad, I'm sad. No, that's not his attitude. He noticed that they're sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of his lord's house, saying, why do you look so sad today? And they said to him, we each have had a dream, and there's no interpreter of it. So Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please. Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and he said, behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his butler. But remember, now look at this, verse 14. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. Not an unreasonable request. For indeed, I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. I don't, I do prison ministry. I shouldn't be here, right? Well, every once in a while that's true. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation of it. 3 baskets or 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you. Not exactly the interpretation you're looking for. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up his head. He lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Now you say, well, now what do I do? He should have said something. I helped him. That can be frustrating. And I'll tell you how frustrating it is in just a second. We're human. You say, well, I helped somebody, and then I needed help. They didn't help me. What do I do about that? You keep moving. Because even that experience is part of what will make you who you are. Rejection. Whatever somebody's throwing at you, you just say, okay, Lord, you're trying to teach me something here too. You don't want to be in prison, I can tell you that. And I don't want to show of hands because we got too many people who have done some time. You don't want to be in prison. And if you think you got a shot away, somebody's got authority or power to get you out, and then they don't, they forget you, that can be tough. But Joseph does not curse God and die. He hangs in there. He keeps doing what he's supposed to do, being who he's supposed to be. Genesis 41, verse 1. Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river. So now, 2 years later, and by the way, at this point, when the 2 guys show up in prison, the baker and the butler, Joseph's right at 28. Okay, so if you're 28 years old, you go, where am I at that point in my life? He's 28, running a prison, and this guy forgets him. 2 years later, he's 30 years old, and this is what happens. Pharaoh has a dream. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine looking fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time, and suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. And then look at verse 9. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my faults this day. Somebody helped me, and I forgot about him, but now you need his help. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, we each had a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. And he shaved, changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. Now let me tell you about that. You better be ready to shave, change your clothes, because it can be game on just like that. What are you getting ready for? And are you ready if he says now? I sometimes joke about this. It's not 100% true. But today it is true. If you came up to me after this service and said, hey, do you want to go play golf? Do you know what I would say to you? Probably, after I talk to the redhead. I would say yes. And do you know where I would have to go to play golf with you? To the golf course. Do you know why? Because I got enough for me and you and about 3 other people in the back of my car right now. Because if you're not ready, you're not ready. Oh, let me run by the house. Oh, let me go do that. No, I'm ready. So the young man I described that I called my friend and said, I will personally pay for you to give him an assessment. You know what he's doing until this guy says yes or no? He's staying ready. Physically. So you say, well, yeah, God told me something years ago and, I don't know, maybe he changed his mind. I doubt that happened. You might change your mind, he doesn't change his mind. God saved me at 6 and called me to preach at 14, and it got crazy after 14. But as I look back over all that mess and all the low points where I wanted to kill myself and beg God to kill me, all of that contributed to me being the person that he wanted me to be so that I would be ready to do what he had called me to do. The business years, the painful years. Do we have any hunters in the room? Raise your hand if you hunt. You can raise your hand. It's not illegal anymore. Yeah. How many of you load your own shells? Raise your hand. Anybody? There's one back there. A lady loads her own. Don't be breaking into her house. She will shoot you. So I like meeting these people. You know why? They shoot a shell. They find the shell. They reload. I guarantee you they're ready. Are you ready? Now you say, well, yeah, I'm ready. What do I do in the meantime? You give a leg up to everybody else who's trying to get ready. You say, well, how's that going to get me where I'm supposed to go? I don't know. That's just what you're supposed to do. You could have a bitter Joseph run into prison. These 2 guys show up, they're sad. Good for you. Be sad. But what kicks in? I can interpret dreams. I'll help you. Why in the world would he give these guys a leg up? Help them at all. Give them any kind of advantage in any way. Because sometimes God uses our abilities and our willingness to serve other people. And he says, okay, now it's not just you trusting me. I can trust you. And you will let me use you when I say, where I say, with whom I say, and you won't be going, well, what's in it for me? What's in it? I'll tell you what's in it for me. I get to serve the Most High God. That's what's in it for me. Right? I shared this again, and this kind of circulates in my head a little bit. Anybody seen The Help? The movie The Help? Raise your hand if you've seen The Help. I recommend the movie. What does the black maid tell the white little chubby girl with the screwed up mom and dad? You is kind, you is smart, you is important. Don't get the you is, right? That's what she said. What kind of crazy Negro maid at that time would waste her time on some little chubby white kid who she could hate and say, hope it never works out for you, hope you die? Because the black maid is so healthy and cares so much about a kid, no matter what color they are, she's going to do what she knows she's supposed to do and help the kid be all it can be. Well, that ain't right. And you got to get over all this mess. You got to figure out who God is, who you are, and what you're going to do in spite of whatever the world says or does. You know what's right, and you're going to do that. And when you get a chance to help somebody, you're going to help them. So keep reading the story here. So they pulled Joseph out of prison, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, verse 15, I've had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it, but I've heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it's not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. It's not me. Are you ready to be pulled into like a White House situation and speak to a president? You say, well, that's probably never going to happen. You know what? Let God decide where you're going to end up. Just be ready for whatever it is. And make sure the first words out of his mouth are what? It's not me. It's him. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream I stood on the bank. So he tells his whole dream. Verse 25, then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows, which came up after them, are 7 years. And the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. So in other words, you had 2 dreams because that's God saying, it's me. And this is about to happen. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Now, what is he proposing here? A wise and discerning person. He says you need to find somebody. And here's a plan. Let me ask this question too. If you have an opportunity, if you're presented with an opportunity, bam, do you have a plan? People say, well, if I had a chance to do this, if somebody said, well, here, you can do this, well, I would do this. Have you got a plan? Now, I know some of you look at me like, well, what are you talking about? I'm talking about being prepared to do whatever it is God has made you to do and prepared you to do, and you are ready. I'll give you a personal example. So my dad told me when I was a young man that he had a professor in seminary tell him that when you preach on the radio, you're preaching to like a stadium full of 30,000 people, and this is probably 70 years ago. And so that stuck with me. So I began to record every sermon I preached. He said, well, what are you doing that for? I don't know. But I'll tell you what's impossible to do. Go back and record them if you didn't. So what happens? You get a few hundred, you get 1,000, you get whatever. Then someone comes and says, or you say there's an opportunity. This ain't a base, this isn't a home run business. It's a base hit business. You can't go in with one CD and say, could you play this 1,000 times on your radio station? You know, that's not what they're looking for. So you have to have inventory, you have to plan, you have to, whatever it is you're doing, you have to be ready. Because if the opportunity shows up and you're not ready, it comes to pass. I do this with people, done this with one of my girls before. Somebody says, I'm a singer. You know what I say to them? Sing. Well, what do you mean? You don't have to explain to a singer what sing means. Are your guns, are your shells loaded? Your guns loaded? Are you prepared? Are you saying, okay, Lord, I'm ready? Now you say, well, what if nothing happens? What if I prepare and stockpile and do all these things and then nothing happens? That is not your responsibility, right? Get ready. Be ready for God to say, okay, you're up. It is in the preparation a lot of times where God determines that you're ready, and that's why he picks certain people, because he sees they have prepared and they are ready. Read a few more verses of this. So he proposes this plan. Verse 36, then that food shall be as a reserve for the land of the 7 years of famine, which will be in the land of Egypt, and the land may not perish during the famine. So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this? A man in whom is the Spirit of God. Not a magician, not a business guy. Can we find a guy like this who has the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. This kid, 30-year-old, was in prison a few hours before this. Clean him up, shave him, and boom, here he is. You say, well, where did he come up with all these plans? That's who he was. He had thought this through. I've shared this before. You say, well, I'm going to take a test. I keep telling you this. Tests are easy if you know the answers. They're a breeze. Tests are a breeze. You say, well, I feel like God is testing me. And I ask the question, did you study for the test? Because if you studied for the test, you're going to pass the test. It's people who have a test come their way and they did no preparation for the test. They go, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know the answers. He has given us the answers. Spend time with him, walk with him, listen to him. Keep reading a few more. Just a great story. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I've set you over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off of his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck, and then he started rapping. That's what it said. No, that's not what it said. Verse 43, stay with me. And he made him ride, look where he ends up. And he made him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zapanath-paneah. You think you had trouble naming your kids. My goodness. Gave him a wife, had some kids. He's 30 years old. Now, I'm not going to read you the rest of the story, but God rescues his dad, his dad thinks that Joseph's dead. God rescues his father and all of his brothers through this plan. And when his brothers encountered him, because they heard there was food in Egypt that he was responsible for making available, when they encountered him, he recognized them. They did not recognize him, and he still gave them a leg up. This isn't about finding out who you're going to be one day. Find a mirror and say, Lord, who am I today, not one day? Because if it doesn't start changing today, you're not going to be ready on that day. I try to explain this to people who work for companies or some job, whatever their job. I say, look, if there's anybody where you work with a brain, they are watching you, because leaders need leaders. And they watch how you think, how you operate, how you treat people, how you submit to authority. They're watching the whole process. And God watches all of that. Because more than just doing some job, you represent Him. And when our lives point to Him, then He says, I can trust you. You're not going to try to grab the glory and think and tell everybody it's all you. And go back to what Joseph started with. Only God. I got more verses, but you'll have to ask me to go play golf, and I'll tell you what they are. Let me read you one of these, and then we'll shut her down. Look at Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. So I'm not telling you this always works with me, but if I meet you, I ask you questions. What do you do? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you headed? I believe that part of my job is to say, hey, put your foot right here. I will help you get wherever you're trying to go. You say, well, what if I do that and like the butler, they forget me? Let me tell you something. I don't care if you forget me or not. He will never forget me. You say, well, what about Joseph being stuck for 2 years? You're not stuck if you're someplace that God has for you. I got a microwave at the house. I haven't made any popcorn in a long time. But it has a specific number. I think it's like 236 or something. You put it less, you got a bag of kernels. You put it more, you got a bag of burned popcorn. Anybody got a microwave like this? Very temperamental. And you figure out the number. And you got to trust the number. Because it's pop, 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 then it stops, and then pop, 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 pop. You know, it's trying to finish. And you're one to pull it out, you're scared you're going to burn it. Trust the number. So God says, look, I'm doing something. Stop opening the door and checking it. Right? Just, He knows the number. If it takes 2 more years, it'll go 2 more years. You say, well, what am I supposed to do in the meantime? And it is mean time sometimes. You're supposed to keep serving Him and trust Him like you've been doing all along. Because even if He pulls you out of prison and you run Egypt, you're going to have to serve Him and trust Him to make it the rest of the way. I do want to read you this one, James 1:27. So there's an interesting word here, and it's also used in Matthew 25 down in verse 36. And in Matthew 25, I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. Okay? I was sick and you visited me. So we think visited means we went by and said, hey, how you doing? And chatted up for a little while. In James 1:27, pure and undefiled religion for God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Well, guess what the word visit means with orphans, widows, the sick? If you look it up, it means to look after, to take care of, to tend, taking care of or nursing the sick. You say, well, I just want to go by and say hi. You decide you're going to help people, it's going to get messy. You're going to help people get where they're trying to go. you are literally going to get stepped on. And that's the deal. What's in it for me? I get to serve the Most High. And as it turns out, Jesus didn't offer us a leg up. He gave his life up. And I had this conversation the other day with somebody, and I am still a little perplexed by this. You have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in heaven in eternity. There is no universe. There are no people. None of this exists. It's just nothing. The nothing doesn't even exist yet. And so the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, clearly Jesus is described as the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. So here's their beautiful plan. We're going to create a universe, and we're going to put people in it, and they're going to accept us or reject us, but we know it's going to be perfect at first. They're going to sin. Adam and Eve are going to sin, and then we're going to have this big problem. And then Jesus, you're going to have to go in and rescue them and die and be buried and raised from the dead and literally become sin to rescue them. And for why? What in the world? Why would God need to go to all of that trouble to create a universe and a bunch of people that some are going to reject him anyway and put his son through all that? What in the world? What's the purpose? Find you a mirror and you'll discover the purpose. You see, if he doesn't go to all that trouble, I don't exist. And if I don't exist, I don't even have an option to choose him. But because he went to all that trouble and I exist, I'm going to make heaven. And they could have looked at each other and said, nah. We got us. We got these angels. Some of them have fallen. But nah. Let's just keep going the way we are. Nah. So what happens? Sooner or later, I'm going to die. And because that decision was made before the foundation of the world, I will spend eternity in that heaven with him. And if you back yourself into all that, then you say, well, if he went to all that trouble just to get me to exist so that I could find out he loved me, Jesus died for me, buried, raised from the dead, and accept all that, and I'm going to make heaven, then I bet he's got a plan until I get there. I better get ready. Even if it's got some challenges, I might have to run a house, might even run a prison. But I'll do whatever he tells me to do. I'm going to be ready. And I'm going to be in position to give somebody else a leg up because he gave his life up. And that's how it works. Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for these tremendous people, some of them total losers as it turns out. But you use us. And I pray, Father, that you would inspire us like never before, breathe into us life, help us and even get a glimpse of what it means as believers to have you living literally in our physical bodies and what is possible if you are living in our bodies and what could happen, what could be accomplished, what you could do if we would just get out of the way and stop whining and complaining and worrying why this is not fair or what's in it for me or whatever it is we get locked down on, or the sin in our lives that so easily besets us, Lord. Whatever it is, help us get past these things and get our eyes on you and realize you do have a plan and a purpose for each of our lives, not just some 17-year-old kid sold into slavery, but Lord, each of us. For anybody, Lord, in this room or beyond listening, and they don't even know why or what's up, but they can't shake it. They know there's no way they're dreaming all this up. But for some reason, all of a sudden, they believe you love them. And the whole thing about Jesus dying on the cross, being buried and raised from the dead makes sense. And they realize they got sin they can't fix, can't deal with, can't make go away, can't process. And they would say, God, this is the craziest thing in the world, but I know you are coming after me and you've been after me. And I yield. I am a sinner. I can't deny that you exist, and I can't deny that you love me. I do believe that Jesus died on the cross and shed his blood to pay for me, for my sin, to get me into heaven with you forever. And I am part of his purpose in coming. I accept the forgiveness of my sin. I accept this gift of eternal life that you offer free of charge. Come live in me, through me, change me, use me, Lord. Help me be prepared, whatever it is you have for me. Make me the person, remake me the person into the person you want me to be. And help me get out of the way and stay out of the way as soon as possible so that I can see your hand at work in and through my life. Thank you for loving me, for saving me, for rescuing me. And Father, for believers who are going to spend their lives marking territory, competing, acting like maybe it's all about us, and it's not. It's all about you. And I pray that we would yield, and we would study for these tests because they're coming, and we would be prepared to pass these tests and be in a position for you to use us where we will say what you want us to say, go where you want us to go, do what you want us to do, no matter what the cost. We love you, we thank you, we worship you, we trust you. We tell you all these things, Lord, and we think we've told you something. We don't have words, we don't have language, we don't have music, we don't have anything that rightly describes who you are. And when we get there, it'll all make sense. But until then, we take a stab at it. We tell you you're amazing, you're wonderful, mighty, holy, holy, holy. And we appreciate so much who you are and all that you've done and made possible. And we pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. First thing is, whether you're in the room or beyond somewhere and you prayed a simple prayer and you know God went from being everywhere to moving inside your life, please let somebody know that. Think of somebody maybe that's been praying for you. Call them, text them, tell them I prayed today. Send us an email, reunion@reunionchurch.org. Just send us a little note and say, I prayed, I got it, he's got me. New life, new everything. It's like being born a second time, which implies another life. And like a child is born, needs to be raised. Don't do this by yourself. You're not supposed to do it by yourself. Let us help you, someone here, or find someone where you are to help walk you through the process of discipleship, because you're not supposed to do it alone. It usually doesn't go well. So let us hear from you in that regard, and couldn't be more excited for you. Happy birthday if that was a decision you made in here or beyond. So, all right. We're going to do our offering. 2 boxes at the door, and we also can go to the website. And I want to just speak to this one more time. I think sometimes people who watch or come say, oh, they probably have an endowment and somebody gave a bunch of money and they don't need my help. If you go back to that mirror thing I keep referring to, if you get a mirror out and look in it, you are the endowment, right? It ain't one person. It is all of us, and we have survived many years where nobody thought we'd survive, and God has been faithful. But the way he is faithful is through people. So if you're thinking, oh, somebody else needs it, I can assure you we will appreciate it as well, because this is tricky times. We got people jumping ship, but we got new people coming on board. We've had some walk the plank, but that's another deal. Kenny, that was worth something, dude. That was worth something. Anyhow, so we appreciate it. Go to reunionchurch.org. There's a give tab there. Click on that, self-explanatory. And we are making it, and we're going to make it, but it's not without everybody participating. All right, let's sing our way out of here. Love you guys. Make sure you don't miss the visitors who you met before. Let's take care of each other. And we will see you again in a few days. Have a great week. We'll sing our way out of here. You'd stand with us, and we'll be on our way.